Hey there, this is Brendan with Business for Chummies. In this video, we're going to take a quick look at how to format your content based on the type of data you're inputting into Excel. So Excel has some nifty tools that allow you to quickly identify the format and force a specific type of format based on the data. So here I'm on the Home tab, and right here in the middle is a formatting section that allows me to quickly choose the different types of format that I want for my cells. So we're going to run through a list of all of the pretty standard types of data that you'd be encountering in your spreadsheets, and we'll talk about what the best way is to format each type of data. So in the first column here, we have the general format. So this is the standard format that Excel uses when no other specific format is applied. And general will allow you to kind of input any type of format that you want, whether it's letters, numbers, currency, decimals. But one downside of the general format is that Excel is going to, behind the scenes, decide on your behalf what it thinks the best format is based on what you're entering. So if I enter letters here, you notice that Excel keeps it as a general format. If I enter a number here, you notice that Excel will keep it as a general format. But let's say I enter a currency. Excel is going to automatically move that format to a currency based on what you typed. And if I change the input, let's say I go from a currency to a decimal, it's not going to automatically update that format anymore. So you need to come back and manually change it, or you need to set the format beforehand based on the type of input. All right, next we have the plain text. So plain text is when you want the contents of the cell to be displayed exactly as you entered them. You don't want Excel to take a guess on the format, or you don't want it to force a specific type of formatting to your data. So currently in the general formatting style, you notice what will happen is if I enter, let's say I have a product number with some leading zeros, and I enter 1, 2, 3. If my product number is as such and I hit enter, Excel is going to identify this as a number, and it's saying we don't use leading zeros as numbers, so it removes those. But if I wanted to display those leading zeros, or I wanted to display content specifically as I'm entering it, if I'm entering special characters or anything like that, then I would want to set this cell up to use plain text. So I'll highlight the cell, I'll come to the formatting, and I'll choose text. And now what I can do is enter those leading zeros, hit enter, and you notice that formatting stays there. Next is the number column. So numbers are just like it sounds. When you want to format a cell specifically to use numbers. So if I choose 1, 2, 3, I'm going to go ahead and come down to the more number formats, and I'll highlight number. And so there's a few options here. One is I can choose the number of decimal places I want in the number. So I can choose as many decimal places as I want to be displayed, or I can choose 0 decimal places for none. I can indicate whether I want to use the thousandth separator or not if the number goes beyond the thousandth number. And then I can choose how I want negative numbers formatted. So there's 4 options here. The first is I can show the number in black text with the negative sign in front of it. The second is I can show the number as a whole number, no negative sign, but make the text red. The third option is to show the number in black text, but with parentheses. And the fourth option is to show the text in red text with parentheses. So I'll go ahead and choose this last option here. Now you'll see it's now forcing the number format to the number that I entered plus 2 decimal places. So even though I didn't enter a decimal place in my value, it's including those decimal places. I could either go back and change the formatting, or I could use these quick decimal place buttons here to automatically update that. You'll notice when I put in a negative number, it's going to automatically choose that format that I selected. Next, we have the percentage type of data. So this is when you want to input the percentage of a whole and convert it from a decimal. So Typically what you would enter is a decimal. If you're entering that information up front and converting that to a percentage, I can highlight the cell and choose percent. The problem that you may run into is if you are inputting data, let's say I want this column to be 50%. If you try to format this as a percentage after you input the data, it's going to take this number and actually convert that number into a percentage. And because 50 is 5,000% of 1, it's now converting it to 5,000%. So you either want to make sure that you format the data as the percentage type before entering the data, or you may need to delete and re-enter your data. Again, you can use the quick buttons here to add or remove decimal places. Next is the fraction type. This one's not used very often, but it is kind of a fun one. So a fraction is just another representation of a decimal. So when you're inputting decimals into your spreadsheet, rather than having it display as a decimal, you can have it display as a fraction. So for instance, if I enter 0.25, I'll come up to my formatting selection. I'm going to choose more number formats, and then I'm going to choose fraction. Now there's some different types of formatting here that I can use. So the first one is up to 1 digit. And what that means is it will always convert my decimal to where the numerator of the fraction is 1, and it will automatically calculate the denominator based on my value. So let's see how that works. I'm going to hit OK. So currently I have input here 0.25. 0.25 is 1/4 of 1. If I enter 0.5, you see how it's keeping the numerator as a 1 and changing the denominator. 0.5 is 1/2 of 1. And if I choose 0.125, it's changing it to 1/8 because 0.125 is 1/8 of 1. I'm going to come back here to my fractions. And if I want my decimal to be converted to always have a specific denominator, I can choose those options here. So I can have up to a specific number of digits. I can always have it displayed as halves, quarters, eighths, sixteenths, tenths, or hundredths. Let's see what it looks like when I choose hundredths. So it's always going to convert that decimal into hundredths. 1/8 is essentially is 13 100ths. You notice that it will be rounding up. All right, the next two columns here are currency and accounting. Very similar format types with a few differences, mostly in how the values are displayed, not necessarily on how they're stored. So I'm going to go ahead and select this cell in column F and set it as the currency type. And then I'm going to select the cell in column G and set this as accounting type. Now when I enter the value in column F, 123, you notice it comes up as a dollar amount. Similar in accounting, very similar value. I can change the decimal places as well here, as well as in accounting. But one difference you'll notice is if I enter a negative number in currency, it's going to display it as a negative number by default. If I enter a negative number in accounting, it's going to display that counting ledger type formatting with the parentheses rather than a negative value. Now the values themselves that are stored in the cell are the same, -123. So calculating and using these values and formulas is no different. The other major difference between currency and accounting formatting is when you have a 0 value. So for currency, when you enter 0, it displays the value as $0.00. For accounting, when you enter 0, it displays it as a dash in that ledger format. So those are the main differences between these two types of formats. Next, we have date. So when you enter a date into a field, how do you want that date displayed? So we'll go ahead and enter January 1st, 2050. Excel is identifying it as a date. But if I want to see that date in a different format, I have a variety of options here to choose from. So currently we're displaying it in this short date format. which we see here. We can simplify it down to only show the last 2 digits of the year. We can make it a little bit more elongated by writing out the word of the month, the date, and then the year. We can even display just the first letter of the month. So for instance, this would display as it shows for January, a J. Or we can show the first letter of the month and the last 2 digits of the year, so January 50. A lot of options here. So you simply need to choose the option that you want to display, hit OK, and when you enter your date in short format, it'll automatically display it in the format that you chose for the visualization. Next, similar for time. So if I go ahead and enter a time in here, you notice that Excel is going to identify it as a specific time. But there is some flexibility as well around how you want that time to be displayed. Do you want to display it with the AM/PM indicator? Do you want to display it in military format, etc.? So I'm going to go ahead and choose just the standard AM/PM display here. So I entered 1:30, and what it's going to do is convert that into 1:30 AM. If I wanted it to display as a PM value, it would need to be entered in as military time. So for instance, 1400 would then get converted to 2 o'clock PM. So you don't need to enter the AM/PM when you're typing or when you're pasting your values into the cell, but Excel will automatically identify based on the military value whether it should be AM or PM. These last 3 options here are all kind of special pre-configured formats that Excel makes readily available to you. Now, a zip code could be entered if you're only using the first 5 digits as a regular number or as a general format. But let's say you wanted to enforce the 4-digit zip code extension without having to type the dash. So for instance, 90210, and then maybe you had an extension that was 0001. But you don't want to have to type this dash every time. I want to be able to type this value and have it formatted with the 4-digit extension at the end of the dash. So what I'll do is I'll come up to the formatting. I'll choose more number formats. I'm going to go to special, and then there's one here that's already pre-configured, zip code +4. I'll hit OK, and you notice that I'll enter that dash in. It'll insert that dash for me without having to type it. So that's nice, saves you some data issues, prevents errors in typing where some values have the dash, some don't, and saves you a little bit of time. Similar with the SSN, I'd like to be able to type in the SSN and have it formatted as an SSN when I look at it. I'm going to come up to the formatting menu, choose more number formats. Again, in the special section, there's a formatting specific for the Social Security number, and I'll hit OK. And this will automatically insert the 2 dashes in the Social Security number format that we're used to seeing. Finally, with the phone number, sometimes you just want to be able to enter a phone number and have it be displayed as a phone number. Phone numbers are one of the most difficult, or at least error-prone types of data when entering, especially when you're requiring users to enter the parentheses, spaces, and a dash. So it's much better to use Excel and the formatting to force that format on the visualization where the user can just type in the number. So I'm going to highlight my phone number, come up to the formatting section, choose more number formats, special, and I'm going to choose the pre-configured phone number option and hit OK. And now it'll display my phone number in that specific format without me having to enter any of those values. All right, so that gets us through all of the different formatting types and the basic ways that you can format your data in Excel. I hope you learned something, had fun. We'll see you next time.